Hey, we got a special guest on the phone right now. It's Dan Shulman. He is the play-by-play voice for Major League Baseball on ESPN, specifically Sunday Night Baseball, and he also calls NCAA basketball games for the mothership. Dan, welcome to the show.
How you guys doing today?
Doing great. So, Dan, how many times have you voted for Omar Infante for the All-Star game?
Zero.
Zero? Yeah.
I don't vote. I don't think I should vote, but a lot of people have obviously voted for Omar Infante. So, I blame the system more than I blame Royals fans, although it did look for a while there like it's not like Kansas City fans were saying, hey, these 3 or 4 Royals should go, and now I'll vote for 4 or 5 other guys on other teams who deserve to go. This was obviously just Royal Palooza all over the place, and it got out of hand. And I think by the time the voting is finalized, I don't think you're going to see 7. You might see maybe 5 Royals in the starting lineup, but I really hope baseball takes a look at this in the offseason and makes some changes, because this is not the way it's supposed to be.
Dennis, Woody, and you are my second favorite person that appears on ESPN. I just wanted you to know that.
Who's your first?
Who's number 1?
Well, that would be me. It's always about it. Well, if you ask Dan who he would vote, he doesn't vote for All-Star, but if he voted for best ESPN personality, I'm sure he would vote for himself. We have contracts involved. We like for us to. Let me shift real quickly with you. Involved in those All-Star proceedings will be Pete Rose. It's in Cincinnati. Based on the latest revelations, should he be even a part of those festivities? Should baseball say, hey, we've got enough evidence now that, we don't even want you around? I mean, he's been around at old-timers games in San Francisco and stuff like that, All-Star games. Your feelings about that?
I think it's possible, Woody, that he could be involved with something to do with the All-Star game, because even though it counts and home field advantage and all that, which I really don't like, I still think the whole thing is really supposed to be ceremonial and a celebration in large part of the sport. So I think there's a chance Pete Rose will have a small ceremonial role in Cincinnati, but I don't think there's any chance now that he gets reinstated into baseball. And if he doesn't get reinstated, he can't get on the ballot for the Hall of Fame. I keep imagining the press conference, Rob Manfred say, the commissioner's there, and he says, I've decided to reinstate Pete Rose. I'll take questions now, and you're sitting in the front row, Woody, and you put up your hand and you say, why? And I can't conceive what the answer to that question would be, because he never admitted anything until he got caught. He, never really apologized. He's never shown any contrition on any level, and this has been 25 years, 30 years almost, where this has been going on. I just don't think he's got any chance of really getting back into baseball.
At the risk of getting more Royals in the All-Star game, I want to go back to them real quick and give them some credit. I thought that team was a one-hit wonder, but they're playing some pretty good baseball. Are they the most pleasant surprise for you this baseball season, or is it somebody else?
I think they're a bit of a surprise. I underestimated them as well. I didn't think they were necessarily a one-hit wonder. I just thought they would take a step back. Having losing James Shields, who didn't pitch well in the playoffs but pitched very well in the regular season for them. I underestimated how much the run last year really made these guys tougher, stronger, I think, and how most of them are heading into their prime. I don't think they're the biggest surprise in baseball. I would look, I think, at Tampa Bay and Houston as the 2 biggest surprises in baseball. I mean, Tampa Bay lost their manager, their GM, and a number of good players, and they are leading the American League East. Now, granted, it's not a vintage American League East, but they've still got the best pitching in the league, and they're in first place in their division right now. And Houston, we all know, was getting better, but I didn't see this big of a jump forward this year. I thought they'd be about a 500 team this year. Maybe by the end of the year they will be. I keep expecting them to fall back. But, they had that losing streak. Then they called up Carlos Correa. They brought up another young pitcher, Lance McCullers Jr. He's doing great. And now they're sitting there with a 5-game lead in the American League West. So I think I'd pick the Astros and the Rays.
Dan, you have to win tonight's game. Who would you rather have on the mound right now, Max Scherzer or Clayton Kershaw?
Max Scherzer, I think. Yeah, I mean, Clayton Kershaw, I think it was his last start, if not 2 ago, said, it was two ago, I believe, called it the most frustrating start of his career. I've seen him a couple of times in person. I've watched him several times on TV. He's still very, very good, and I think better than his numbers suggest he is in terms of wins, losses, and ERA. but I don't think he's quite as good as he has been the last 4 years. You know, instead of making maybe 3 mistakes a game, maybe he's making 8 mistakes a game or something like that, and they're just connecting on them every now and again. But I think Max Scherzer, you know, with what he's done on the year, his ERA is like 175 or whatever it is, and nobody's ever had 2 starts. I think you can make a case that nobody's ever had 2 back-to-back starts as dominant as he has had. He's faced 57 batters. He's retired 54 of them. He struck out 26 of those, and he's given up 1 hit, 1 walk, and 1 hit batter. It's really mind-boggling.
Dan, do you think that the nation realizes how good Arenado is here? People here talk about, you know, he's going to turn out to be the face of the franchise instead of Tulo, who will probably be traded. That's part A of the question. Part B of the question, you've done enough games here and watched the Rockies play. Everybody talks about you can't win at altitude. Do you think, as an observer and as an expert, that if you do the right things here, you can win?
I think you can win. I mean, they made the World Series in 2007, although it was an incredible run at the end of the year to get into the playoffs, and then they just kept rolling all the way to the World Series before the Red Sox got them. I think it's more difficult to win at altitude. I think if you've got anything that sets you apart from other teams, whether it's day games at Wrigley, altitude in Denver, when Citi Field first opened, and it was a ridiculously hard park for hitters, so the opposite problem they have in Denver, I think that was a real burden for the New York Mets. I think anything out of the ordinary makes it harder. They can be better than they are, but I think they face some challenges that other franchises don't face. And in terms of Arenado, you know, Colorado is in a unique situation. I mean, obviously, in terms of national coverage, if you're not doing well, you're not going to get national coverage. And the time zone is an issue as well. You know, being in the Mountain Time Zone, if you want to, you know, the games are a little bit too late for people in the East. If you want to get a national game, then Colorado's got to move the game either an hour later or 2 hours earlier. It just seems the stars don't align for them to get a lot of national attention. And I'll be honest with you, in terms of national, you know, how well-known players are nationally, there's no question Tulowitzki is the best-known Rocky, and in my mind, there's no question that Carlos Gonzalez is the second best-known Rocky, and then I think there's a great drop from there. Even though Arenado is a stud, as you say, a great, great player, one of the best third basemen in baseball, I'm not sure he's a household name around the major leagues.
He is Dan Shulman. He does play-by-play for Major League Baseball on ESPN. He's in his 5th year as the voice behind ESPN Sunday Night Baseball, and listeners can catch him on ESPN this Sunday night. Mark?
Let's go to Tulowitzki really quickly. I mean, I think you're absolutely correct. Nationwide, he's got to be the most well-known Rocky. His injury history is also well documented. He's come back this year. He's hitting over 300. How well do you think he's rehabbed his reputation within the game? And obviously, I ask you that because is his trade value back up, you think?
Right. I think it's higher than it was a couple of months ago, but I think it's lower than it was, say, 3 years ago. And this is just my opinion, Mark, I believe that if somebody's going to take Tulowitzki, and I think somebody should, I think it's time, for everybody's sake, for Tulowitzki to move on, for the Rockies to get 2-3 good young players, some salary relief and all that. I think I think the Rockies are either going to have to eat some of the contract or take less in prospects. You know how this works. It's the same thing even with a Cole Hamels, who's got 4 years, $22 million left, whatever, which by today's standards is reasonable. The Phillies are going to have to make some accommodations if they want to make the trade. I'm not sure the Rockies can ever get full value for Tulowitzki. I think they might get 50, 60 cents on the dollar, either by having to pay a lot of his salary or by taking less in prospects. But it's time, whether he goes to the Yankees, whether he goes to the Mets, who knows where he goes. But I think it's time, for everybody's sake, for them to make a trade. It doesn't look like they're going to be a contender next year. You never know. But you know, why wait till he gets a little bit older? Why wait till maybe he suffers another injuries? You said he's relatively healthy right now. I think the time is now to move Tulowitzki.
Dan, I'd like to ask you, getting totally away from that, I get 50 emails a week, and I'm sure you do too, saying, you know, how do I get to be on ESPN? How do I get to be whatever it is?
How do I get to be on ESPN?
Obviously, knowing what he's not doing.
Yeah. So, yeah, hanging out with me. I'll make a call for you. It won't do any good.
Thanks.
I would like to know, seriously, after those guys get through, I don't know how you got through it. What do you think was so important in your life, and I'm sure this was a goal from early age, what do you think really made it work for you, that made you, put you in a position of where you are one of the best callers of the game that I've ever heard?
Oh, well, I appreciate that very much. It's a question I've never been asked before, and I'm not sure I'm the one to answer the question. I mean, I kind of actually fell into broadcasting. I was a math major in college, and I have no background whatsoever in broadcasting, and started doing it at a little small radio station. I'm Canadian, too. I live in Toronto, and I started working at a little small station about 50 miles north of Toronto. Luck was a lot of it, jobs opening up, a radio station in Toronto going all sports. My first game on ESPN was because somebody got sick, and I was working with Buck Martinez on Blue Jays games, and Buck also worked for ESPN, and so I guess maybe there was a connection there, and somebody asked me to fill in. And that's how I got started one of the ways I got started at ESPN. I think it's like, honestly, I think it's like any other job. I think you've got to work your tail off and get along with the people you work with. I don't think there's any secret to it. I mean, I worked 7 days a week for about 5 years, but at various radio stations, TV, whatever they told me to do, I did it, and then I asked what I could do next. And it's it's the same message you try to impart to your kids. It's nobody's going to hand you anything. If you want something, you got to go out and get it. So I think I was part lucky, part hard worker, part some good timing, and I've got a real passion for what I do. Every Sunday night at 8:00, I say to myself, how lucky am I to be that somebody's paying for me to sit here and watch this baseball game? Yeah. And I hope that I feel that way as long as I'm doing this job.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I reply to everybody: work harder than everybody else, be more passionate than everybody else, be unique, be creative, and get lucky. And you became Lou Gehrig to Wally Pipp. If somebody got sick and you got the chance to go on ESPN, that's the residue of luck is hard work.
Hey,
Branch Rickey said. Dan,
before we let you go, I'm sorry to leave such an important question for last, but how much does John Kruk eat during the games on Sunday night?
I would say on average about the same amount as Kurt Schilling eats. And both of them eat considerably more than I eat. But I would say Krucky has a full meal. If the game starts at 8, a full meal at about 6. And if somebody comes around in the 4th inning and says, would you like a couple of hot dogs, the next time he says no will be the first time. But you know what? I've worked with Terry Francona, who worked with us for a year, ate an inordinate amount of food. Like a lot of these guys, I don't know where they put it. I just can't do it, especially while I'm working. But Krucky and Schill both have healthy appetites, and they'll kind of sneer at me when I say no, or God forbid I have a salad at dinner while they're loading up the nachos. I get the stink eye from them too. But I love both of them. They're great. They've been great to me. They've got a good chemistry. They were teammates obviously in Philadelphia, and I've been lucky to work with a lot of great people over the years.
And Dan, we love listening to you on Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. We'll be tuning in this Sunday night. Thanks for your time.
All right. Hope to see you guys out in Denver at some point.
All right, you got it. We'll be here. Thanks, Dan.
Don't get in a hurry.
Maybe next season. Dan Shulman of ESPN, and that segment was sponsored by John Elway Cadillac of Park Meadows, Colorado's #1 Cadillac dealer.
When you go to buy a car, what do you really want? You probably want a lot of cars to choose from. And you want the dealership's best price. Not some starting price or target price, the best price. And you want it immediately, not after hours of negotiating. And you want a salesperson who doesn't get paid more if you spend more. Because, well, you don't want to spend more. Well, you're in luck. John Elway wants all of those things too. Better yet, John Elway wants you to have all of those things too. Come see us or click on johnelwaychevrolet.com.